Airlines Flight 331, while landing at the Norman Manley International Airport, has cast Jamaica into the international media spotlight. A team from American Airlines is in the island about now as a major local and international probe continues into last night's crash. Now, the aircraft, with just over 150 passengers and crew members, was landing in heavy rain when it overshot the runway, crossed the Port Royal Road, and crashed into rocks on the edge of the sea.
At least 91 persons were injured, but there were no fatalities, and it could have been a major catastrophe had the aircraft ignited or slammed into the sea. Garfield Burford was there up to early this morning.
Trauma, anguish, confusion. The scene at the Norman Manley International Airport minutes after the crash of American Airlines Flight 331. Months after the attempted hijacking of a canceled flight at the Sangster International Airport in Montego Bay, another serious aviation incident has thrust Jamaica into the international media spotlight. This time it's an American Airlines flight which has crashed while landing here at the Norman Manley International Airport in Kingston. As bad as that was, with several persons injured, it could have been much worse, leading all here to agree that this was a miracle that no one died.
When I saw that and I saw the threshold, I got into the brace position immediately. And the next thing I heard was a big crashing sound, and we just ended up rolling right onto the rocks. And that's it. The aircraft began to fill up with fumes, and the flight attendants and the captain, they responded immediately.
Passengers told us the plane had been encountering turbulence for much of the journey from Miami, so many applauded when the plane touched down on terra firma, perhaps out of relief. Little did they know, though, that just moments later they would be on the verge of death. Not even the darkness could mask the horror they faced.
And when we were coming to land, I noticed that as we were going down, because I was at a window seat, and I noticed that we were far from the ground. And knowing this tarmac, because as a Jamaican and flying in and out of here, you know, if you don't hit the tarmac from the beginning, you know, you don't have a lot of room to recover. So we hit the tarmac in the middle, and I was expecting them to overshoot, but apparently there wasn't time. And with the low visibility, they did what they could do. They weren't able to stop in time, and they skidded right into the rocks.
And then all of a sudden you just heard a big boom, like it had crashed into something, and the whole ceiling came down, all the lights went out, and you could smell smoke and like sulfur, you know, fumes from something. So I mean, the plane came to a stop, and then I was sitting right by the exit, so we opened the exit doors, and everyone just poured out.
Some passengers said the aircraft touched down too far down the runway and the pilot didn't have enough time to slow down. Most suggested the plane skidded on the drenched runway. The investigation is expected to determine the exact cause of the crash. We saw the injured being whisked away in ambulances and police service vehicles. The transport minister insisted the report he received suggested the response from emergency crews was in line with international guidelines.
You have a 4-minute response if it's off the actual airport, which this is, and you have a 90 seconds if it's on the landing area of the airport. And I have a check up to 7 minutes, and it shows that the convoy, which would have been one ambulance and a fire truck, left the airport and arrived at the scene within 3 minutes. Now the point is, if anyone is saying there wasn't an ambulance, the ambulance that arrived took 3 people to the hospital. So you'd have to now get the other tripped in local ambulances that would respond through the Ministry of Health and the hospitals.
The authorities might be patting themselves on the back, but some passengers are not convinced. They say the plain truth is that it was a lethargic and ineffective response. In the end, over 90 injured passengers taken to hospital, 7 were admitted, most of those with broken bones. We received information at least 2 of those might be in serious condition. So a crash which could have turned into an aviation catastrophe on Jamaican soil. The search is now on for answers. Garfield Burford, CVM News.
Well, staff from both major public hospitals in the corporate area were kept busy last night into this morning. Although 13 persons have been admitted, their injuries are not considered life-threatening.
It's after 3 a.m. Wednesday, some 5 hours after the crash. At the Kingston Public Hospital, some of the injured, although still shaken, were relieved to be discharged from the medical facility. Of the 92 persons who were injured, 38 were taken to the KPH, 7 were admitted, while 36 persons went to the University Hospital of the West Indies, 6 were admitted there. 6 persons were taken to Medical Associates Hospital and 12 to Andrews Memorial. Health Minister Rudyard Spencer in a release stated that there was an excellent response from the team from the Ministry of Health, hospital staff and ambulances from both public and private health facilities.
No emergency surgeries were performed at those hospitals, and there was one admission to a private hospital where surgery was performed on a female for a broken nose and lacerations to the face. The rest of the injuries have been classified as lacerations and blunt trauma, and there were a few fractures of long bones and ribs.
The scars were evident on some of the injured we spoke to, many of whom had arrived on the island just in time for the Christmas holidays.
I had a very large concussion here. My husband is still in the hospital. He has a split in his face. I had neck problems and back. But I have been seen and I was given some medicine to take care of some of the problem. I'll have to do the rest when I go home.
When it land, all of us clap. Then I hear this tumbling. Then my pants start to shake. Then when I look, I see the thing fell from the top, hit me in my head, and that was it.
Many were confident that they would be compensated by the airline and pointed us to a contact number that they received on leaving the hospital. None we spoke to gave any indication of plans to sue the airline for damages. They were just happy to be safe. When asked whether they had any doubts about flying with the airline again, there were mixed reactions.
I don't know how we're going to get back. Right now, we don't have any other choice. We've got to get back. We're here for 10 days on vacation. Yesterday was the first day, so it'll be one we can remember.
So, are we any closer to determining what caused the crash? An emergency press conference was called late this morning at Jamaica House to provide an update on the investigation. Dwayne Burbick was at Jamaica House.
The investigation team is being headed by the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority and also includes representatives of American Airlines and the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board.
6 representatives from the National Transport Safety Board of the U.S. are now on the ground in Kingston, and 7 representatives from American Airlines to assist with the dismantling of aircraft assemblies arrived this morning from Puerto Rico, and our investigators are now on the scene, and we will be proceeding with the investigation.
Representatives from companies that manufacture aircraft parts are also to join the investigation team in the next 24 to 48 hours. So far, the flight data recorder has been recovered. The investigators are still to recover the cockpit voice recorder, which is also known as a black box.
What will guide us in determining the cause factor initially will be an analysis of the flight data recorder and an analysis or a reading of the cockpit voice recorder, which will be in our possession and will be sent away this afternoon for analysis.
However, the cockpit voice recorder will not be removed until all the luggage has been weighed and removed from the aircraft. And Colonel Darby was careful to point out that the investigators will not be making any assumptions as to the causes behind the crash until the analysis of both recorders has been completed.
You will not find accident investigators making any announcements as to the cause until it is conclusive. So when every single factor is considered and one can draw a conclusion as to the cause factor, then an announcement will be made.
However, one local technocrat who spoke to CVM off the record has already raised some concerns about the length of our runways. In the meantime, the Transport Minister Mike Henry has continued to dismiss claims that the turnover time from the emergency response teams was unsatisfactory. He said industry standards require a 4-minute turnaround time, and from information reaching him,
The timing shows that all of that done arriving at where the aircraft had its incident was 3 minutes. So that was within the 1 minute that is by the National Transport Services Commission of the World time frame.
During Berbick, CBM News.
Details of the damage to the fuselage of the 737 aircraft.
Investigators will be attempting to determine what caused the aircraft to overshoot the runway, fly over the Port Royal Road and end up meters away from the edge of the sea. Viewed from the air, the impact and the damage to the aircraft provide an even greater appreciation of the miracle that no one perished in the crash.
Miracle indeed, and so we say